The Capitals trade Anthony Mantha to the Vegas Golden Knights. What did the Capitals get? Draft picks and retained 50% of his salary. Next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. I would love to talk Capitals hockey with you one-on-one, and we can do that on subtext. Just check the show description for more details. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, the first trade for the Capitals took place this evening as the Capitals send Anthony Mantha out to the Vegas Golden Knights. In return, the Capitals get draft picks and they have to retain 50% of his salary. That wasn't exactly what I was looking for. We'll talk about that in the show. A little bit later, we will talk about how Evgeny Kuznetsov did, in fact, show up at Bears practice today in good spirits. We'll talk about that. A little bit later, Matthew Phillips is officially back in the Capitals organization, but he will be playing for the Hershey Bears. And then later, we will talk about how Spencer Carberry is going to try to get Ivan Miroshnichenko back into the lineup. So it kind of comes out of nowhere, just like it always does. This case, Darren Dreger sends out a tweet saying that Anthony Mantha was traded out to the Vegas Golden Knights, and that was it. And we didn't know the return at first, kind of just waiting patiently what's going to happen. And then the return comes and you hear it's draft picks, and I'll talk about those a little bit more specifically, and that we're retaining 50% of his salary. So I'm going to go ahead and try to restrain myself from all the jubilation that I'm feeling inside. But I guess ultimately this is what Brian McClellan said was going to happen. Now, they did get draft picks that potentially could be used in the draft, or they could take some of those draft picks as draft capital and use it to acquire another player. If we remember to last season, that's how the Capitals got Rasmus Sandin. Also, Gustafsson was in the mix there. So the first big piece moves, and it's Anthony Mantha. And I'm going to go ahead and say I'm happy for Anthony Mantha. The feel-good story of the season for Anthony Mantha, a guy who just last season, everyone was screaming, get him out of here. We'll pay you to get him out of here. Had a turnaround season, a 20-goal season thus far. And, dropped 10 pounds, hired the mental coach, and found his way again. And it's interesting how he was able to turn it on in a contract year, being that he is going to be an unrestricted free agent in July. But he did get it done, and he will be on the Vegas Golden Knights at least until July. And then what is the future after that? I guess that remains to be seen. But the first big move took place, and it was Anthony Mantha. The first big move comes as the Capitals today, as they trade Anthony Mantha to the Vegas Golden Knights. Frank Saravalli said in current state cap, Mantha at $2.85 million chews up nearly half of the $6.3 million capture they got from Stone being moved to the LTIR. That leaves roughly $3.45 million to spend, but could get creative with some roster moves, of course. Be surprised if they don't spend it. I, of course, am talking about Frank Saravalli's comments on why they ultimately brought in Mantha and what that means for them. So that is why they went out to acquire Anthony Mantha, with Stone getting moved to the long-term injured reserve. So not too surprising. So what do the Capitals get in return? More specifically, at a granular level, in return, the Caps get a 2024 second-round pick, a 2026 fourth-round pick, and the team will return 50% of his salary. So including a 2024 second-rounder, the Caps now have picks in the first, second, Vegas's, 2 in the third, fourth, 5th, and 6th rounds in June, no 7th. The 2026 fourth rounder gives them a second pick in that round in addition to all others. So the Capitals definitely do have quite a bit of draft capital that they can use at the draft if they would choose to. I happen to think that they will use that to flip and get another younger player, a forward, hopefully a center on this team. Maybe not just one, maybe more. But again, a complete about face for Anthony Mantha this season. He has 20 goals and 14 assists for 34 points in 56 games and leading the team with 17 goals at even strength. Again, if anyone out there that's watching or listening to this said, I kind of thought that this was the season that Anthony Mantha was going to have, to that I would say, I want to see your receipts. I don't believe it. He has had a bumpy ride with the Capitals, and let's just take a look at his time playing in the district. He came here in the 2021 season and 14 games played in that season, 4 goals, 4 assists. In the 21-22 season in 37 games, 9 goals, 14 assists. In the 22-23 season in 67 games, 11 goals, 16 assists, and the high water mark for the Capitals this season, the 24 season, 56 games played, 20 goals, 14 assists. So this season right now is his best season playing for the Capitals. The high water mark for him was in the 18-19 season for the Red Wings when he, in 67 games, had 25 goals and 23 assists. So to say that, the deal that set Anthony Mantha to the Capitals has aged kind of like a carton of milk would be an understatement, considering what the Capitals gave up in return for him. If we want to rewind time here a little bit, the Capitals sent Jacob Vrana, Richard Panik, a 2021 first-round pick, and a 2022 second-round pick to the Red Wings. In return, the Capitals got Anthony Mantha. And I just went over his stats. I know that this season he has popped off the page, but his time in Washington has been lacking in the luster department other than this season. So all things considered, again, I'm happy for the guy. He found his way. That he was a healthy scratch even to begin this season, and last season was a bumpy ride, that he found his way, and he did it just by opening the door, scoring that first goal, and it's the confidence thing. You saw the same thing with Alex Ovechkin. If you're snake bitten for a while, a good way to get off the schneid is to score a goal, and that's what was the case. So what did we remember that he did? He hired the mental coach. He dropped 10 pounds, came into this season a changed man with a positive attitude, and he will be a free agent in July. So good news, Capitals fans. Maybe we could get him back again in July. Probably not. But so that is his future as of right now, is that he's headed out to Vegas to help the Vegas Golden Knights. And hopefully, for them, they're hoping that they can win another Stanley Cup. And they're going to be able to do that with Anthony Mantha, who, at least for the Capitals this season, has scored 20 goals, his best season as a Capital. So good for him. And, it was an interesting thing for him. If you were an everydayer of the show, I spoke about last summer that he better start playing well, or he's going to be playing in the AHL. And there were some people that were even questioning if he had that in the tank. So quite an about face for Anthony Mantha as he found his way. And again, as Capitals fans, we got to be happy for him. But the first big move for the Capitals to take place, again, there might be more, and this is only Wednesday, if you're listening to this on the podcast. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens between now and Friday. What other kind of moves are going to take place? That is not going to be the only move. I am almost 100% sure of that. I'm 99% sure of that. Crazier things have happened, but that is the first big move, and that is a rather big move. And just my thoughts on it, draft capital, retention of 50%. I don't know. The retention part, was that necessary? I'm not so sure, given the fact that we're only getting draft picks for it, but that is the move. And we are finally free of Anthony Mantha, because I'm going to tell this to Dan of last summer. We did it. We finally got him out of here with no context of how good he did this season. Just high five pass, Dan. You did a good job. So he is no longer here. And we don't have to worry about Anthony Mantha, getting being a healthy scratch, not getting production, because ultimately we don't know. So this was the high water mark for him on the Capitals. Lord only knows how he is going to play next year. If you take a look at how he played last year, put that in the calculator, plus how he played this year and hit the equals button, you look at it, it's a question mark. So we don't know what kind of Anthony Mantha will be out on the ice. All things considered, I'm happy for him. Happy trails. Good luck in your NHL adventures. But we're on to the next one. Also, coming up here after the break, Evgeny Kuznetsov did, in fact, report to the Hershey Bears at practice today. What does that mean? And what was he like on the ice? What were his spirits? What kind of attitude did he have? I'll discuss coming up. We're past the halfway point of the season. It's almost the end of the season. And let's face it, Capitals fans, it's been an up and down season. Regardless of where we are in the current standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Let me tell you something, guys. I was not the kind of guy that was that big into fantasy sports, but now I am, and I love it thanks to Sleeper. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 players' stats. You heard me, Capitals fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So it did happen. I talked about it. I speculated about it. Would Kuzy ultimately show up in Hershey at practice? And I'm here to tell you that he did. And from the video footage that I saw, from the photos that I saw, from what I heard from the head coach, he appears to be in good spirits. He's positive, and he has already an immediate rapport with the players in Hershey. And he is making them laugh and, doing good things. And I have no reason to believe that he is not going to be a key contributor for the Hershey Bears. What is the long-term plans for Kuzy with the Bears? We don't know. The trade deadline is on Friday, but like I've spoke about in the show, I think if a trade was going to have taken place for Kuznetsov, it already would have happened. So it's interesting. He showed up and he made a good mark on the Hershey Bears in his first day there. The Hershey Bears were already a great team this season, coming off a Calder Cup winning season, but now they've got much better, at least on paper. And head coach Todd Nelson couldn't be more excited after the future of Kuzy and the Caps organization was a bit of a question mark after he was waived on Saturday. So when he showed up Tuesday in Hershey for practice, Todd had to get used to the idea that he had a premier NHL talent on his team. So you take a look at Kuzy. He's not just, like a good AHLer. He has the potential of probably being one of the best forwards in the AHL. The Bears were good last season. They got a whole lot better at least on paper, with Kuznetsov on the active roster. You're waiting to see. We didn't know what was going to happen next. Nelson told reporters in Hershey 2 days ago, I was like, until I see the whites of his eyes, I'm not counting on him, but showed up this morning bright and early. It was a really good energy. Other teams are looking at us now saying, holy cow. Those were the words of Todd Nelson talking about what other teams in the AHL are saying about Evgeny Kuznetsov playing in the American Hockey League. How long will he play in Hershey? Well, that depends on what happens at the deadline. There's always the possibility he gets dealt. If not, the work is that he might move in the offseason. There's the option of trading him, buying him out, or letting him play out his contract in Hershey. But until he can serve as a mentor for some Capitals young talent in the city of chocolate. It's got to be one of the cool things for the players playing in Hershey to have Evgeny Kuznetsov playing on their team. Not just an okay player, what stands to be probably the best guy on the team. Kuzy seems to be in good spirits, and his attitude is speaking louder than his play on the ice, which I have no doubt will come together quickly. Kuznetsov has 17 points in 43 NHL games this season. So that's where we're at. He did, in fact, show up. There was a lot of speculation. I speculated, but he is in Hershey as a matter of fact. He came in here today with so much energy. It was unbelievable, Nelson said. We just had a short conversation saying, you know what? You're no different than anybody else. You're just going to come here and we're going to try to help you get back to the National Hockey League. We're going to do our jobs as coaches to try and help you. We're excited. He's excited to be back on the ice. It's got to be a big moment for him. And, he has gone through his personal issues, but I think that he is at least trending in the right direction. And again, for Kuznetsov as well, I wish him nothing but the best. He's had some personal issues. So have we all. I wish him nothing but the best. So is there a chance that we see him in Washington again? Improbable, but not impossible. I would be most surprised to see him wearing the Red Capitals jersey at any point. But hey, stranger things have happened. What is one of the things I've learned about Kuznetsov? You really can't anticipate what he is going to do next. Many people thought he would never show up in Hershey. Well, he was at Hershey Tuesday morning at practice. So just goes to show you. So ultimately, this is going to be a good opportunity for Kuzy to prove that he's changed and can still play some great hockey. And maybe he can get back into the NHL, whether it's in Washington or not. Question mark. So what's going to happen with him? There's the potential he could get bought out. There's the chance he could get traded. There's the potential he could finish out his contract with Washington in Hershey. It seems highly improbable. Or if his contract got terminated for one reason or another, he could go over and play in the KHL. That was kind of what a lot of people had thought was going to happen. Still could happen, but as of right now, he is a Hershey Bear. Right now, we're on a day-by-day basis. We're just going to live it day by day because a lot of things could happen. Obviously, this time of year, there's a lot of excitement around the trade deadline, and there is. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens on Friday. Will Kuznetsov, in fact, be a Capital after that? Or will there going to be orchestrated a deal that sends him out? Maybe they'll have to bundle him together. Maybe the Capitals will have to retain some salary, or maybe they'll buy him out this summer. It's going to be interesting. The saga of Evgeny Kuznetsov continues. What is his future? We talked about Anthony Mantha, no longer a Capital. To a certain extent, I would almost be happy to be past the Kuznetsov phase for the Capitals, that he could move on to another team and, just kill it wherever it is. But it just seems for right now that he's going to bide his time down in Hershey, do the best that he possibly can. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think his time playing in Washington, the big team, is in the rearview mirror. All right, so coming up here after the break, Matthew Phillips is back in the Capitals organization. And when could we potentially see Ivan Miroshnichenko back in the lineup? I'll discuss coming up. No matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you've got to take a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed. If you're hiring, you need Indeed because Indeed is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements or you don't pay. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites hoping to find candidates with the right skills, you need one powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. Indeed partners you on every step of the hiring process. Find great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. Listen, if you are involved in HR or you're simply hiring, you need friends like Indeed. So, starting right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked on. Offer valid through March 31st. Go to Indeed.com/locked on to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire. You need Indeed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Matthew Phillips was waived not too long ago, and surprisingly, a lot of people were up in arms. Capitals beat writers were like, oh my God, Matthew Phillips is out of here. And the whole time I'm thinking to myself, are you guys seeing something that I'm not seeing? Because I know that he played really good in camp, but he has been kind of abysmal in his opportunities on the big stage, under the big lights. I just don't see it. And one of the things that I know is that you cannot live on former glory. And I know that he killed it with the Wranglers and the Calgary Flames organization. And that's great. Good for him. But I don't see it. And every time I hear people kind of question about what's so great, they're like, it's more of an analytical thing. He's good at generating chances. Mumbo jumbo mumbo. Listen, for me, I'm a meat and potatoes guy. I like to see goals. I like to see assists. Or if you're a goalie, I like to see saves, those kind of things. So when you start getting into the weeds, that's when you're like, enough with that kind of deep analytic stuff. I know there's generating chances and all this other kind of stuff. But for me, it's about how many goals has he scored? How many goals has he assisted on? Those kind of things. And it hasn't been real evident. But he did clear waivers. So just to rewind time, he got waived. The Pittsburgh Penguins picked him up off the waiver wire, and they waived him. So the Capitals had the right of first refusal. He's back on the Capitals. But it gets a little bit more than that. He's not playing on the Capitals. He's playing in the Capitals AHL affiliate, Hershey Bears. So if he can play at least a fraction of good as he did for the Calgary Wranglers, for the Hershey Bears, then I think it's a win for the Capitals, or at least a win for the Hershey Bears. But taking a look who's back. Matthew Phillips is back after being waived by the Pens. He will immediately report to Hershey if another team didn't claim him first, which they didn't. He is officially a part of the Hershey Bears. I'm going to try and tamper expectations. I know historically he's played really well in the AHL. We just haven't seen evidence of that in the NHL in the regular season. They lost him in waivers a month ago. A lot of Capitals fans and Caps beat writers were up in arms. I, for one, don't see it, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and hope he kills it in Hershey. So you take a look at Hershey, already are just a really rock star team. Now you add Kuznetsov. Now you add Phillips. They should be headed for the moon. There's a lot of excitement if you're a Hershey fan or living in Hershey or just a fan of Bears hockey in general. I think that they're going to be able to make a really, really solid push for the Calder Cup again. It's an exciting time of year in the NHL, and the Capitals more specifically, movement and the potential of more roster moves has me excited. So that's what we know for sure. Matthew Phillips back in the fold, playing in Hershey. So let me catch you up on the latest Hershey talking about this week. Pierre Dubé, fourth in the league in goals, returned from Washington to the Hershey Bears. So Pierre Dubé, who we know has killed it in the AHL in his opportunity on the big team, in a limited role, in limited games, didn't really pop off the page. I'm not going to write him off, but what I'm going to say, he was given his opportunity and he didn't necessarily kill it, but it was a pretty small sample size. Evgeny Kuznetsov was assigned from Washington down to Hershey. Matthew Phillips, 36 goals in the AHL last season, claimed on waivers and assigned by Washington back down to Hershey. So they have a lot of, pieces that are added back into the crock pot that is the Hershey Bears, with Pierre Dubé in there. Pour in a little bit of Evgeny Kuznetsov and Matthew Phillips, 36 goals last season in the AHL. I think it's fixing to be a really great season for the Hershey Bears. And it's not even the trade deadline yet. As I record this, it's only Tuesday. So there is a lot that can take place between now at 8:53 local on Tuesday and Friday on the trade deadline. So what else is going on in the Capitals world? What other players that could potentially be on the move? What is the latest? Dowd is said to be close to returning. He's getting pretty close. That's the farthest he's gone in a day from a standpoint at full practice, head coach Spencer Carberry said. So he was practicing in a non-contact jersey. Again, there is the game on Thursday, being that he has been circled as, highly likely to be on the move. I would be surprised, very, very surprised if he played with the Pens. My hunch is they will keep him in the bubble wrap until after the trade deadline. If for some reason no one does pick him up, which would be highly unlikely, then go ahead, cut the bubble wrap off and throw him back out on the ice. But if not, he will be off to whatever other team that is. There's more and more rumblings that could potentially be Edmonton. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play again, like I say, and being that it is going to be the trade deadline, talking about other players that have been injured and are inching towards their return. Martin Feravari also skated in a non-contact jersey and continues to progress. A key piece on the Capitals blue line, not just in the present, but the future. We take a look at Sandin and what other pieces, could potentially get moved. We thought that could be Ethan Bear. There was rumblings about Noah Hannafin, even though that seems more and more likely that he's headed to Tampa. So that's where we're at with Martin Feravari. Oshie skated for the first time in a non-contact jersey and some skills work before practice. His status is still weak to week, though. I guess with Oshie, don't rush it, especially if the perception is that the Capitals are in fact out of the playoffs. There is no need to rush. But there is one other player that is fixing to get back in the mix because, well, a lot of players are already starting to move. We already saw Anthony Mantha move this evening on Tuesday night. There is a good possibility that more players will be on the move between now and Friday. So it's good to integrate some of these players that are familiar with the organization, i.e., Ivan Miroshnichenko. The Caps called up Ivan Miroshnichenko from the Hershey Bears on February 26th after Anthony Mantha was injured in the game versus the Panthers. He hasn't seen any game time activity, just practice on his most recent call-up, but that might change. Spencer Carberry wants to work him back in the lineup, and considering the potential of a lot of movement on Friday, the Caps would be best served to be have a different roster on the ice on Friday. So you take a look at it. Things could change a lot. We don't ultimately know how it's going to manifest itself. Will Dowd be here? Will Pacioretty be here? Will Edmondson? Would Abe Kubel be here? We don't know. So it's good to have Ivan Miroshnichenko in the lineup, being that he is familiar with the lay of the land for the Capitals on the big team, being that he's been called up before. So taking a look at it, Carberry said about getting Miro more playing time. Yeah, I think he'll work into the lineup. Carberry said Tuesday, I'm not going to completely commit to Pittsburgh, but we're looking to get him in the lineup soon. Soon is a bit vague, but I think that it could possibly be sooner than later. Miro is still getting acclimated to the North American game, and his game has dried up a bit in Hershey. He scored only 1 goal and 7 assists in his last 23 games with the Bears. So a guy that seemed to just keep punching his way up through, he had the Hodgkin's lymphoma that was in remission, punched his way through, put the weight back on, punched his way through, terminated his KHL contract, punched through, made it to Hershey. He's a little bit in limbo. I'd take a rest. He's punched through a lot of levels. He has not, seen that peak performance quite yet. I still think that he's getting used to the North American game. So why Miro? And why now with the Caps? Well, the biggest reason that he's familiar with the team, and that's why he got called up with Mantha getting injured. I know you'd probably point to the lack of production and say he hasn't done much in the last whatever in Hershey, but he's been up here, played games for us. Carberry said the Caps play Thursday against their bitter rivals, the Pens, so they want to be ready. So an eventful day for the Capitals as we see Mantha get dealt out to Vegas. We get draft picks. We retain 50% of his salary. Evgeny Kuznetsov did, in fact, show up in Hershey for practice. Matthew Phillips is back in the fold in the Capitals organization, this time playing in Hershey. And what is the future for Dowd? What is the future for Ivan Miroshnichenko getting more playing time? This is an exciting time of year, and as Capitals fans, you should be super pumped. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On's 24/7 streaming channel. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Listen, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.